Someone asked me what I'm going to speak on today, and those of you who heard me speak before, transportation all day long, all week long, all year long. Because, well, obviously it's been a great honor for me to be selected by my colleagues to be the chairman of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. And it was already mentioned, Bud's name was already invoked, so I better say something about it. It really is a great honor for me to be able to follow my father's footsteps. As you know, he was extremely effective as a chairman. As I tell people, the times have changed. Back in his day, it was all about power. Now it's a finesse. So I like to consider myself a finesse forward. But you know, times have changed. It's different. But the one thing I will mention, when I was selected chairman, someone said, "As a father or son ever followed a father before?" So of course we did history. And the only other time it's happened in history was John Quincy Adams was followed by his son Charles Martin Adams. So I figured if the Shusters in the same company, the Adamses, it's like being with the Franklins. It's all, I think it's all good. But again, I'm quite honored to be selected as chairman. And as we start out the Congress, you know, one of the things that I want to try to rebuild is bipartisanship. On our committee, one of the few committees that's over the years has operated in a bipartisan way. So reaching across the aisle, talking to my colleagues, Nikki Jo Rahal and I have known each other for a long time. I think we've begun to rebuild that, and we're working on this water bill together. I think that's going to be proof as we move forward that we can do things in a bipartisan way. But transportation is important. It's important to all of us, and it's that simple. It's that important. I look around the room today, and everybody here was touched by the transportation system today, somewhere or another. And as I look out at crowds all the time, I say this. I was talking to a gentleman from Louisiana who was in the pharmaceutical business. And he started talking to me about his business, and he had 58 trucks and getting here and getting there. And then he stopped all of a sudden. And he said, "You know what, I never thought about it, but I'm really in the transportation business." And he is, and we all are. Everybody is. Even that mom at home this morning that didn't leave the house, you know, she got the Cheerios and the milk, or the dad, and poured it on the kids' cereal. That all came from the transportation system. So it's vital to all of us. It provides a strong physical platform for our economy to move forward, to have economic development and jobs. And if we want to have economic development and jobs, we've got to make sure we have a robust transportation system to be able to move our economy along. And in the last Congress, I think we made great strides when it came to passing MAP 21. Chairman Micah, I think, did a very good job doing what he had to do, and you know, he went into this legislative process with a down economy, no earmarks, and as I like to say, he went in not with one arm tied behind his back, but with two arms tied behind his back. It was very difficult. I think we came out with a bill that again streamlined things. We moved the ball forward, and we were able to come up with something that, as I go around the country, the governors and secretaries of transportation around the nation appreciate what we were able to do in MAP 21. But I believe we're at a tipping point. When you look at what the American Society of Civil Engineers came out with a report card, it gave us a D+ in our infrastructure. I think we all know, if we travel around the country, we can see it. I met the other day with George Will, and he was talking about how Penn Station in New York is third world. You know, he goes to other places in the country, and you know, their transportation system is up to date and shiny and looks new. So you know, we are at a tipping point, and I believe there is a federal role. It's very, very clear to me that there's a federal role, not to do it all, but we have to be there to create this national transportation system. And as we went through MAP 21, I was appointed to be sort of the salesman, to go to the most conservative in our group. And as Mike knows, when you sell cars, sometimes it's tough to make that sale. But so I was appointed to talk to our most conservatives. And so as I'm going through my lessons of history that I learned and did some more research, it was the reason we have the Constitution we have today, really the breaking point in the Articles of Confederation, was a transportation issue. Maryland and Virginia tried to come to terms on a treaty to be able to navigate the Potomac up to Pennsylvania, to build canal roads and portage roads, canals and portage road system to get to the Ohio Territory. And they were unable to come to terms. And as they fell apart, the negotiations, they realized that if we can't promote commerce, if we can't connect ourselves physically, we're never going to be a United States of America. So when they went back to the drawing board, they came with the Constitution that we know today. And one of the key philosophers that almost all, if not all, our founding fathers read and studied was Adam Smith. And Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations, we all remember, he talks about the invisible hand of the market, but he also said, which is not widely reported, is the government should provide three things for the people: security, preserve justice, and erect and maintain infrastructure to promote commerce. And that's key to what we do. If we didn't have the Constitution we had today, we wouldn't be the power we are today, the economic power, and we wouldn't be connected. And we're connected by our ideas, freedom, and democracy, but the physical connection is the transportation system. And that's what we need to make sure that we have as we move forward into this global economy. If we're not investing in our transportation system, we're not going to be competitive, we're not going to have the trade, we're not going to create the jobs that we need to create. So as we start this Congress, and we've laid out our agenda, again, first I wanted to be bipartisan. I want to make sure that we're talking to stakeholders and looking around the room. And some of you have been in some of our roundtable discussions. Also the panel that Mary mentioned, one of the first things I did was set up a panel to look across the modes. As we're structured on the committee, it's we've got rail, highways, aviation, but I thought it was really important as somebody to take a deep dive and look at how's the port connected to the rail system, to the highway system, to the aviation system. And that's what Jimmy Duncan's doing, and he's doing a great job traveling the country, holding hearings. So that was really important that we do that, and promoting competitiveness and economic growth. As I said earlier, if you don't have economic growth, you're not going to trade, you're not going to create the jobs. So I think it's vital to the economy of the United States. What we're working on in this Congress, really three big bills we're trying to move forward. The first is Water Resources and Development Act, the WRDA bill. We haven't done one since 2007. And one of the challenges is that about half, 46% of the members that are here today were not around in 2007. So there's an education process to bring members up to speed. Because if you're not from a port city or you don't have a river running through your city, river town, you don't really understand our big flood problems. You don't understand the importance of WRDA. So we're going through the process. We're still hoping for some floor time in July. It's starting to get a little shaky, but we hope to pass it in July. But pretty much got the bill together, I believe. Like I said, hammered out a lot of details with our colleagues on the other side. But the water system in this country is so important to us. When you look at what's the most efficient mode to transport the least effective, Mary started to tell you this, but it's the water system, it's the river system is the least expensive. And we've got locks and dams in this country that are 100 years old. The average age, I believe, is 60 years old. They're built to be 50 years, so it's a serious problem that we face. And up and down the rivers, the water levels aren't high enough, so they have to decrease their loads, which makes it less efficient. So an incredibly important part of the system. And as we were going through our roundtable discussions, the soybean growers came to us and told us that how important the water system was to them, the inland waterway system. And to make their point, their number one competitor is Brazil. And it takes our soybean growers $85 to take 1 ton of soybean from Davenport, Iowa to Shanghai, China. It costs the Brazilians $141 to move that same ton, the same distance. And every year, because we haven't made the investments in our infrastructure, that number takes up. And the Brazilians have just announced they're going to invest $26 billion to really create an inland waterway system. They've got the rivers to do it, they just need to dredge them and do those things necessary so they can drive that cost down. And of course the Chinese are also there investing, trying to help them to drive the cost down because they want to see competitive markets. Also, I don't know if anybody saw this, but it's not widely reported, but on June 13th, the Chinese inked a deal with the Nicaraguans. They're going to build a canal, bigger than the Panama Canal, longer than the Panama Canal, and the Chinese are going to be in our hemisphere operating the new super canal, and I'm sure they'll build it on time and under budget, like the Panama Canal is being done. But at any rate, the WRDA bill, I think, is extremely important because it deals with all these issues, and again, we look at this, if it's not on the floor in July, we hope to have it there in early September. The other major bill we're looking at trying to move is a passenger rail or rail safety bill. Passenger rail in this country, I think, is important, and the number that really drives me on the importance of it is the population of the United States. When you look at, it took us 65 years to go from 200 million to 300 million people, and we crossed that number in 2005, and they projected it would take us 32 years to go from 300 million to 400 million. We're already 7 years into it, 8 years into it, I guess. And we are going to be at 400 million people. And when you look at the corridors around this country, Northeast corridor especially, our most densely populated corridor, people aren't all moving to Florida, Arizona. That corridor is going to continue to expand, and congestion is going to continue to increase. So making sure we have a passenger rail system, focusing on the corridors. You know, there's places in this country we have rail that maybe we shouldn't have rail, at least not at this point. Focus a system that is going to organically grow so that 20 years, 30 years down the road, we do have a national system that's maybe not profitable, but at least above the rail can stand on its own 2 feet. And I think we can do that with some reforms, and I know Jeff Denham, who's the subcommittee chair on that committee, is working very hard to work with the stakeholders and trying to move something forward. And then finally, of course, MAP 21 will expire in September, and the big question is certainly we want to do more reforms, but how do we fund it? And I think it's important not to take anything off the table. I think it's vital that we make sure the trust fund is solvent moving forward, to be able to have that robust physical platform, to be able to have a system that can move our products efficiently. Because if we can't get things from the middle of the country to the world markets, they're not going to effectively and efficiently, they're not going to be competitive, and that means jobs. And so we've got to make sure that we're looking at ways to get funds into the trust fund. And as I said, I don't think we should take anything off the table at this point. And as we move forward with tax reform, I think there'll be opportunities. And in fact, I get the sense, I don't want to speak for Dave Camp, but I get the sense talking to members of the committee that the one issue when it comes to revenues that brings Democrats and Republicans together are just transportation issues. And people understand the need to make sure we have a trust fund that has the funds in it. The other issue that we're having a lot of oversight, Frank Lobion, the subcommittee chairman, is aviation. It's so important to us. Aviation contributes about $1 trillion to our economy. You know, when I look at aviation, it was deregulated, but it's the most regulated, deregulated industry we have in this country. And when you look at the tax, I mean, look at the ticket, the tax on a ticket, 20% is high or higher than tobacco and alcohol. So I always tell people it must be a sin to fly. But you know, we need to make sure we're not using the airline system, the aviation system, as a piggy bank. And the administration just came out again with another, want to slap another fee on the airline ticket for revenue. And it's again, it's wrong. It's a viable. It needs to be a viable industry to stand on its own 2 feet. And I think with the recent merger, I think the airline industry is finally right-sized. It's going to cause some of us in secondary markets real heartburn. Pittsburgh, by the way, Nick. But again, the system is I think right-sized, and I think from that you'll have the 4 big carriers, and I think we already have smaller carriers. That Spirit Air flies out of Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and it's growing. It's at over 100,000 people this year, and it's been projected to be 200,000. So I think there'll be opportunities for secondary cities and tertiary cities to get those kinds of services. So as we move forward, though, on any of these transportation bills, especially on MAP 21 or the next iteration of MAP 21, really need you folks in this room, your help, trying to make sure, putting forth a program that the American people understand how important transportation is. Because I think that most Americans, they drive to work this morning in Washington, they come to the water cooler and they complain about the congestion, and then they forget about it, and then they go home and complain for 10 minutes and forget about it. So we really need to raise the awareness of the American people about how that system all works together. I know that there have been groups formed in Washington, one in particular, America's Infrastructure Alliance, that's performed by former Secretary Mary Peters, one of my former chiefs of staff, former Congressman John Sullivan and Bob Dole are involved, to raise the money, to put forth a campaign to advocate, educate the American people. The seed money was provided for AIA by the airlines, the truckers, the railroads, the water transportation people, and the contractors. So they provided the seed money. And it really has to be a 30,000-foot advertising advocacy campaign. Again, how does the system tie together? Because I need the American people knocking on the doors of members of Congress saying, this is really important. It's really important we have the revenues there. It's really important we have the right policy there. So Congressman X or Congressman Y, make sure you're supporting a transportation system that we need in this country. And then after we get their awareness up, of course, to move a bill, I need you folks to be talking to your members of Congress and explaining to them that that plant in whatever state that ships to the port in whatever state is not going to be competitive, is not going to create those jobs unless we do what we need to do in this transportation system. I think that if we're successful, and I believe we will be, we'll be able to, again, have a system that's going to be the envy of the world. It's going to be a system that creates that economic activity that we need to create the jobs the American people want and deserve. So again, thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate this. I look forward to working with each and every one of you as we move forward on these various transportation bills. So again, thank you very much.